We're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to let Counselor Gauntt introduce herself, but I'm Dustin Dunst, the other senior class counselor. We're going to get started by just showing you guys Manhattan High scholarship stuff, and then we'll turn it over to our K-State Financial Aid Advisor.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. Again, my name is Taylor Gauntt, and I'm the other senior class counselor. So to start off for this scholarship list, it's a pretty long list. I went through and reused the one that they had the past couple years, and so we really narrowed it down, tried to shorten it up, and it's sorted by date. So if you're interested in applying for scholarships, you'll go to usd383.org and click on schools in Manhattan High. Maybe. And then under MHS Counseling Department, there is financial aid and scholarships. And then right there at the very top to the right of financial aid is our scholarship link. So if you click on this, it'll open up a SharePoint Word document. And within this document, it is sorted by date. So for example, we just started obviously the month of December, so this would be a great opportunity to start sifting through some of these scholarships to see if it's applicable to you. A lot of them are pretty generic. Some of them are very based on like what you want to major in, things like that. So definitely check it out. If you have any questions, come see me or Mr. Dunst, and we'd be happy to help. And I'm going to turn it over back to Dustin, and we're going to get started.
All right, we got Derek Gauntt from K-State. He's an advisor for the Financial Aid Office, and he hopefully knows way more about the FAFSA and financial aid than I do, so we brought in the big guns today for you. So here we go with Derek Gauntt.
Thank you guys. I appreciate y'all coming out tonight. I know it's, Tuesday. Or no, is it? Yes, it is Tuesday night. Probably have dinner plans, but I appreciate y'all coming out. My role as a financial aid advisor is to just point students in the right direction toward funding their education, because as we all know, that is one of, if not the largest barrier to post-secondary education. And so part of this presentation is going to be K-State specific. There are some opportunities at K-State that I would be remiss not to mention. Gotta plug ourselves, but I also want this to be applicable to for students going to any school. So let's get started. So topics we're going to cover today: identifying the different sources of funding, the different types of aid that are out there, general timeframes, deadlines, priority dates, specifically to K-State as well as some other places. Steps on applying for aid, as well as the big elephant in the room, the FAFSA. First, I'm going to go over just sources of financial aid. So there are several out there, 4 main categories though. First of which, federal aid. You would apply for this using the FAFSA, and I'll cover that a little bit later specific. Aid to the FAFSA may be need-based, based on your student and the parent's income during a given calendar year. And priority dates vary by the school. We'll get into K-State's priority date for the 25-26 FAFSA is March 1st. But it was newsworthy how messed up this past year's FAFSA was. So the dates as far as FAFSA have been varied the last couple of years, but typically the FAFSA has historically opened in October, and the priority date at K-State has been December, but we pushed it back because the FAFSA was delayed again this year, but fortunately it's actually open now. We'll get into that. Other sources of aid would be the state, Kansas Board of Regents, offers a lot of scholarships as well as grants for Kansas residents, and so there are those based on merit, so academic success and involvement in different activities. as well as they also have need-based aid. There's, of course, institutional aid from the college itself. It can be merit-based. It also can be need-based. Aid could be gift aid, where it's free money. It could also be self-help, meaning student has like a stake in it, whether it's like working, it's like work study, or federal loans, where they will need to be paid back. That's kind of what we mean by self-help aid. I looked that up today because I saw that on this slide and I didn't know what that was. That's what self-help aid is. Finally, private aid. There's sources, much like a lot of those. Some of those scrolling up recognize, like the Red Scholars, Hagen. Those are large scholarship organizations, and there's all sorts of them all out there. So we'll cover a little bit of those. So, types of aid, scholarships, of course. These are gift aid, not meant to be paid back. Often are going to be merit-based, some are need-based. There are grants, again, gift aid, not paid back. Most are going to be need-based, based on financial need. Work study, talked about that, kind of a self-help aid where a student works on campus and earns a paycheck and kind of subsidized by the federal government. And finally, loans. We all know, borrowed money. Certain types can be need-based, but almost all students will qualify. So, starting small at the individual level, at the institutional level, at an individual college. Again, based on merit and need, aid can be gift aid or self-help, as we talked about. At K-State specifically, I know, we use information from the FAFSA to award aid. Like, that's from K-State's funding. And so it's important to complete the FAFSA, especially by priority dates, even if oh, I'm not gonna get anything because we make too much or it doesn't reflect this and that. Some schools will still use the FAFSA, even if you're not using any federal aid. So benefit to completing it. And deadlines and application requirements vary, so please check with that college or university that you're interested in. Check on their priority dates. We'll talk a little bit about ours. So, institutional grants and scholarships. Of course, these are of course a gift aid, not going to be paid back. To be considered for a lot of institutional grants, again, you'll want to be completing the FAFSA by the priority date. For 25-26, K-State's priority date is March 1st. That's the same as it was last year because the FAFSA just opened. So we're allowing some extra time. And institutional scholarships, of course, they have various applications. Of course, they can vary in terms of how you apply and how you are eligible, but it's always a good idea to check the website of that school. And there's probably going to be some additional applications, not just one. So, specifically at K-State, I'll briefly talk about this because I want to be respectful of our time. There's a lot to cover. Financially, it can be complicated. But we have both general university scholarships based on a student's GPA. We can accept up to a student's 7th semester GPA, so that's the end of the first semester of their senior year, and we can update that in our office by February 1st. You have to apply by December 1st, which has passed, but you can update your GPA by February 1st using that 7th semester GPA at the latest. And you'll be automatically considered for that scholarship when you apply to K-State. You'll be, if your GPA and ACT score meet the metric, you'll be awarded that scholarship. We also have our K-State Scholarship Network application. It's a big, long survey. It gets sent out to all the foundation, the department, the colleges. It's how you award departmental scholarships, like from the College of Engineering, for instance. And that is actually open now. Priority date for incoming freshmen is February 1st. So if you've been admitted to K-State, you want to complete an additional scholarship application to be considered for those departmental scholarships, get on that KSN. There is just a brief, you may have seen this or something like it. A lot of schools have a similar type of matrix. for their scholarship eligibility, both with GPA, and it is best GPA, I don't think I mentioned that, where we're considering weighted or unweighted, whichever is better, and then the matching ACT or SAT score if you've taken that. And again, we can accept updated grades and scores by February 1st. So, yeah, sometimes students will apply, they'll have a certain GPA, and then this semester, high school, they'll get it bumped up a week. If you let us know, we can increase you up to the next range. Our K-State, each college you're going to go to, if they have some sort of admission scholarship, they're going to have some sort of renewal requirements, whether it's maintaining a certain GPA, K-State that's a 3.0, and completing 24 credit hours during an academic year, fall and spring semester. So just maintaining full-time enrollment, essentially. If, for instance, you don't meet one of those requirements, whether it's you had to drop a class or your GPA dips below a 3.0 cumulative, there is a way to appeal that scholarship. And most schools that I have worked with have had some sort of scholarship appeal, and it certainly can never hurt to ask. So something to be aware of, where you can explain your circumstances and continue to receive a scholarship like that. So one of our institutional grants is the land grant promise, and this is it's new, and it's something that's changing, and it might look different, but this is the way it is for this year. It assures that total gift aid, scholarship, and grant aid combined equals the cost of tuition, or 15 credit hours of tuition. There is some eligibility criteria that we'll get to. We'll look at a lot. It's kind of a lot of criteria have to fit, but essentially 15 credit hours of tuition a semester, whatever that cost is, and say your scholarships and your grants don't quite meet that, K-State will provide enough gift aid to then cover the rest of your tuition cost. It is just tuition, not necessarily housing, food, or course fees. It's just the cost of tuition. So, eligibility criteria. Told it's kind of a lot. So the main issue, or the main thing here, main things to point out, Pell Grant eligible. You must be eligible for a Pell Grant. Your total family income must be $70,000 or less, and that you have met the priority date for the FAFSA. So if you're completing the FAFSA by March 1st and you meet this other criteria, it's guaranteed that you'll receive enough gift aid to cover 15 credit hours of tuition. So, pretty exciting. There will be time for some questions at the end. So, private sources of aid, there are quite a few. Scholarships come from organizations, boosters, clubs, churches, whatever. And some certain companies, businesses will provide a lot of scholarships because they're a tax deduction, a donation. So they have a lot of opportunities there. Deadlines will vary widely. You saw a list of all of those there. So always a good idea to check on sources like that. We have a few search engines that we recommend. I think I'll have some screenshots of some, but there are a lot of places to find scholarships because people want to fund education. So the money's out there. Just some examples of some private scholarship search engines. Ones students have primarily used, or I've recommended, are College Board, FastWeb, places you create a profile and you get scholarship recommendations based on that. So it's not a bad place to start. And just some general tips for scholarship searching, and your counselors know most of this stuff. Saving everything is important to make sure that you know what you've applied for in case you get a letter and you're not really sure where it came from. It's always a good idea to make sure you get it all taken care of. Those small scholarships can really add up. $100, $200 there may not seem like a lot when you're talking about the full cost of education in the modern day, but those little ones, they can add up. Essays. Not a lot of people used to write essays. We were talking earlier, in a past life, I was an English teacher. I know students don't like to write essays, but that is actually, you can use that to your advantage. There's not going to be that many applicants to those that require essays. So you write one essay, you're one of a few, plus you can probably use that essay multiple times. Just make sure you proofread and change the name of the scholarship donor at the top of your essay, because I made that mistake when I was in high school, and it didn't go over well. And just in general, this is just general advice for anybody, just make sure your social media is clean, because they will look you up. So, and some of the resources that are going to be on that list that your counselor shared with you, as well as those on our website, I mentioned libraries, employers, search engines, organizations, all that good stuff. All right. The state, as I mentioned, has quite a few grants. Some of these might be specific to something you're involved with, whether it be ROTC, military, Kansas Heroes, if a parent believe it's some sort of qualification there regarding service, nursing, service, scholarships, teacher service. There's someone specifically for computer science educators. We found that today. There's the Promise Act Scholarship, which is a pretty significant one. That's for schools that offer an associate's degree, or there's 2 years of technical certifications. Kansas will provide funding. You have to just agree to do some work. It's like stay in Kansas and work for 2 years, but they will essentially fund your education for an associate's or a technical kind of certification. So something to really look into if that's something that interests you. And yeah, and the state also offers some need-based grants that you can qualify for if you complete the FAFSA. So the state also uses the FAFSA for like the comprehensive grant. All right, let's get into some federal aid. So a lot of this you may have heard about: Pell Grants, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grants, SEOG, or there's one specific for teachers, the TEACH grant. It's an acronym with some specific qualifications, but if you're interested in education yourself, it might be something to look into. Again, these are federal grants, so you have to complete the FAFSA to qualify, and most are going to be need-based, and they're particularly for undergraduate students seeking their first bachelor's degree. So, fresh out of high school, grants are for you. And again, the awards will vary, because there is a formula for calculating your aid and determining how much aid you can receive. Another form of federal aid is federal works. I kind of alluded to it earlier, where you're working on campus and you're earning a paycheck. And the way it actually works is the federal government actually pays your employer, and your employer uses that to then pay for your paycheck. It's just being eligible for federal work study is essentially an incentive for those companies to hire, or for those on-campus employers to hire you, because you'll be saving them money. So, if you receive your financial offer from your school that you've applied to, and it shows federal work study, you accept that. You're not saying you're going to work on campus, but you're just opening that door in case you really want to. And good thing about campus jobs, those employers are going to be flexible because they know that you're a student, they know you have to study. And of course, it's going to be local if you're on campus. And even if you're not eligible for work study, because it is need-based, you have to demonstrate financial need in order to be eligible for work study. Even if you're not eligible, there are still plenty of on-campus jobs. Many of the same ones will hire a student regardless if you're eligible or not. I know that we have several students who work in our office. Some are eligible, some are not, so it can vary, but it is an incentive, certainly, if you are interested in working while in college. All right, federal direct loans. We all know that federal loans, student loans, has become a bit of an issue, but they are a reality. And the thing about what I try to do in my job, so again, my background's in education, so I know every student has different circumstances, and so my goal is to always make sure to put the student first and make sure we do what's best for each individual student. So, and for some, federal loans are going to be a good option for funding education. And generally, federal aid, federal loans are going to have at the very least competitive interest rates, maybe not always the best, but they're going to be competitive. And they will have some of the best deferment options and repayment plans. So I always recommend, if students are looking at loans, consider federal loans before going through a private lender. There are private lenders out there, but federal loans have many benefits, one of which is the possibility for subsidized loans, meaning that interest will not accrue while you are in school. The Department of Education will subsidize, hence the name, subsidize those loans, meaning that they pay the interest while you're in school. So, but those subsidized loans are need-based. You have to demonstrate on the FAFSA that you have financial need. But, so if you don't happen to qualify for subsidized loans, you will at the very least receive unsubsidized loans, meaning the interest will accrue in school. And for the 24-25, the interest rate for federal direct loans for undergraduates is a 6.53%, in the middle of the pack. I mentioned repayment plans are going to be very flexible. And repayment is going to be deferred while a student is in school at least half the time. Another federal loan option, and I know all our eyes jump to that big red number right in the middle of the screen, but Parent Plus loans are another option where the parent is the borrower. The parent doesn't necessarily have to be the parent on the FAFSA in a situation where like a student's other parent was the one listed, and then another wants to be the parent on the Plus loan. It's possible where the parent, or it can be a step parent if they're on the FAFSA. They can apply for a loan. It does actually, require approval. It runs a credit check looking for adverse credit history, not necessarily a specific credit score. And parents can get an endorser on these Parent Plus loans if they need one. And repayment with these loans can begin immediately, but they can also be deferred while a student is in school, but interest will accrue on these loans if they're deferred while a student is in school. So, we'll have plenty of time for questions, if there is that. So, now probably the reason y'all came, completing the FAFSA. So the first step with completing the FAFSA is going to studentaid.gov. You can, I think FAFSA.gov redirects to the same site. It will guide you there. There will be probably big flashing lights telling you to complete the FAFSA because they really want to push that. And as I mentioned, the 25-26 FAFSA is open now. It opened, the beta actually launched like November 18th. The official big time launch was December 1st, or that was the date that they said they would, but it is open now. It is open wide. You can go in and complete that now for the 25-26 school year. And you'll just want to make sure to complete the 25-26 form. There is still, you can still complete the 24-25 form, like current students can complete that, but so just make sure you're looking at 25-26 when you get there. The first step in completing the FAFSA is creating your FSA, Federal Student Aid ID. Both the student and the parent will need to have an FSA ID. To create it, you just need an email, your name, your social, I think your date of birth, and every person can you can only have one FSA ID because it's tied to your social, so only one social, one ID. So, in circumstances where either parents are married, biological parents are married, only one parent needs to create it if you file jointly. If your parents are married and they file separately, both parents will need to create an FSA ID because they'll both need to log in and consent to having their tax information transferred into the FAFSA, but we'll get there. And of course, the student also needs to have one. If a parent has remarried, the step-parent will also, if they have not, a parent, this is where it gets complicated. If a parent has remarried and the step-parent is, if they file separately, the step parent will also have to create an FSA ID to then contribute to their information to the FAFSA. Cool. So, in case there's anybody here who hasn't completed, who did complete a FAFSA before 24-25 and is then going to look at one here in 25-26, there's some brief changes that happened last year, like newsworthy how much of a struggle it was to get it rolling, but some technical stuff in terms of EFC, estimated family contribution, got changed to SAI, student aid index. They used to offer the IRS data retrieval tool where you can just, it's super convenient to just, since both federal agencies, the Department of Ed will talk to the IRS, they'll just pull your information. That is no longer an option. You have to consent to that in order to get it going. And then they called it the direct data exchange. And some other different information, specifically one that might affect folks is small businesses and small and for-profit farms or rental farms. They're all going to be reported as assets. Number in college is no longer used. So if you have multiple children, both are in college, it's not going to affect students' FAFSA. And then the priority deadline for last year, date, not deadline, you can still put the FAFSA after this date, but the priority date is March 1st. It's the same. It was last year, it's the same this year. Next year could be different, so it's always important to keep in mind. As I alluded to, so when you're in the FAFSA, specifically student and parent, like if the student filed taxes during the year in which you are, during the year that the FAFSA is pulling from, both the student and the parent will have to agree to have their tax return information transferred from the IRS directly into their FAFSA using the direct data exchange, the DDX, if you're fancy. It's all going to be, it's all secure. We don't even have access to that information until it literally comes to K-State in a secure file. We can't access it on the federal side of things. They will not let us see it. It's only if it gets sent to K-State and in our system, that's the only time that we see it. And even then, it's the federal tax information. The FDI is heavily protected. We've had to change a lot of our practices because of this overhaul of the data exchange. It's extremely secure. And plus, the federal government, they've all got your information, like I said, to the same federal agencies. So just making sure you have to consent. Otherwise, the student will not be eligible for federal aid if you do not consent to have that transfer. That is one stipulation. So when talking about federal aid and tax information, it's important to know that the year in which you are completing the FAFSA is going to be, for the next year. So right now we're in 2024. If you complete that FAFSA for 2025, 2026, you're actually using tax information from 2023 because you haven't filed your 2024 taxes yet. So they want to make sure that you have those taxes available, and so they're going to use the prior year is what they call it. So starting in 2025, they're going to use 2 years before 2023 is what they're going to use. So for this year, we're using 22, and we know that was a while ago, especially when we get to August of 2025. 2023 might have been a very different year financially. We understand we can help in those situations. And there are a lot of nuances to the FAFSA. It's kind of a living form in which you answer one question one way, you're not going to get the same answer. If two different people answer a question differently, their FAFSA is going to look different. The next question is going to be different. If it's based on you answered yes to this, then you have to answer these questions. Or you answered no, then no, you will skip right to the end. Kind of that. So it can look a lot different, and there are so many guides out there to completing each specific question on that FAFSA. And if you have questions about it, you can set up a meeting with me, with another advisor. You can probably, there's so many different resources out there for completing it if you get caught up in the actual form. But jumping to the end of the process, you do have to sign that bad boy. You gotta, and it's not, you don't have to, submit any sort of, photocopy of the signature. You just click and you're good to go. Just making sure you actually do click the sign and submit. You have to check the box, because that's like your signature, and then you click submit. So, to recap, the steps for contributors. Well, I guess maybe to explain it in the first place. Contributors, meaning parent, the parent on the FAFSA, you'll receive an email from the student, because the student will log in and complete their portion. They will get to a place and say, hey, you need to invite a parent. They will enter in your name, your date of birth, your social, and an email, and then you'll get that email, and you'll be invited to contribute your information to it. So it doesn't have to be on the same machine, it can be on 2 different things. The mobile version works pretty well, or so I've heard. And yeah, if you haven't already, you'll create an FSA ID. If you log in, you'll say, like, hey, you've got a FAFSA to complete. You'll do it. You'll answer all the questions. You'll make sure to sign and submit to that DDX data transfer, and then you will get an email saying, like, hey, it's been approved. And the Department of Education loves to email folks, and they will be sure to bother you if you need to make any corrections, if they require any additional information. So always keep an eye on that email that you use to sign up with that. Once it gets sent to K-State, we have access to say, like, okay, yep, we do need something else, or we need to make a change or something. So feel free to contact your financial aid office, whatever school you go to. They will be able to some degree, help. Sometimes the Department of Ed doesn't like to play nice, and we have to kind of push a little bit, but for sure we can kind of point you in the right direction. It might just be, yeah, you gotta talk to them, but they should be able to help you as well. So, all right, just some basic, if you have questions about what is all this stuff, SAI, cost of attendance need, what are we talking? So, SAI, the Student Aid Index, is essentially, it's a number. It's to establish a student's need. It stays the same regardless of where you end up. You get an SAI 500 here. SAI 500 is going to get sent to Yale. It will get sent to Johnson County Community College. Regardless of where you're going, it's going to stay the same. And a lot of factors are considered when calculating the SAI. So income from the federal tax information, FDI, assets, family size, as well as the poverty level of your home state. So we're all here from Kansas, we're all going to be such the same, income information, but yeah, that does play a factor. SAI then is compared to the school's cost of attendance. And this is the process of determining what you can receive. So each school is also going to have their own cost of attendance. And we include things, of course, tuition, housing fees, books and supplies. We're also going to consider transportation. We have like a miscellaneous personal expense, any loan origination fees, like for the federal direct loans or Parent Plus. We will throw that in there as well. We can also consider things like study abroad costs, purchasing a computer, parking permits, athletic tickets. Like there's all sorts of things that we can include. Even include like fraternity and sorority fees. So it's just as far as communicating with your office, because sometimes you have to complete an appeal to add that to cost of attendance. So, and yeah. For independent students or students with dependents themselves, you can also include childcare expenses and all sorts of stuff. But as we will see, that cost of attendance is very important in determining what aid you receive, because we did that cost of attendance, we subtract the student aid index, and that gives us your financial need target. And that will vary based on the school you get. That financial need can vary. For example, so say school number 1, say that's some Ivy League school. School number 2, K-State. School number 3, local community college. The cost of attendance is, it varies at each. But that SAI is going to stay the same regardless of where you're at. And then the need, those colored blocks on that third column, that's what changes. And we determine how much subsidized loan eligibility is based on need. Certain types of grants that you have to have need in order to receive it. It can vary, but that's kind of the secret sauce of what we do. As I talked about, there are situations folks have come through where, so say August 2025, or maybe before that, might be best, but you let us know that, hey, 2023 was an awesome year, but 2024 was not so good. I lost my job, or we had a major medical deal and I've been paying that off, or there's a lot of different circumstances, filing for bankruptcy, all sorts of things that can happen. We can complete an appeal to then update your income information on the FAFSA. We can say, got it, great, let's use 2024 instead of 2023. Or, it's July 2025, let's take what we've got from this year so far and then project for the end of the rest of this year. And then we'll go based on that. And I've seen some dramatic changes as far as their financial aid package because life happens. And we want to be able to we want to be there to help in those situations. Plus, it's always a good idea to just talk to an advisor, talk to your office if stuff like this does end up happening. And there's some examples there of different changes, whether it's if you, the parent, are paying educational loans for yourself or making Parent Plus loan payments, we can account for that. Say in between 23, you've married, filed, it's joint, end up getting a divorce, and now you're single, we can make that change because it will bring in whatever you filed in 23. So if you file it jointly, it's going to bring that other spouse in, but we can do a judgment appeal to remove them. So, yeah, works out. Less common are these are, they call them, what do they say, special circumstances? These are federal terms. And then there are unusual circumstances. I don't know why they came up, that seems, whatever. But unusual circumstances are those in which where the student is estranged from their parent, they're a victim of human trafficking or something horrible like that, and where they're not dependent or independent by some other means, we can do an override. So I hope that nobody has these situations here, but if that is the case, come talk to us. This is more of like a hands-on, this and professional judgment appeals are both pretty case by case, but this one especially, we will help you with that one. But some things I didn't put on here, but being independent on the FAFSA requires some of these circumstances. There's some other ones. Being financially independent, parent not contributing to your college of education, living on your own, those are not factors that will make you independent on the FAFSA. You will still require a parent's information on that. We can maybe cover that in questions if necessary. Okay, so learned maybe a little bit about federal aid and what we're doing. So as far as like a next steps, and I saw on your site you have or the school site, you have like a checklist, some like lines and all that. So at this point, a good thing to do is if you're thinking, college for fall 2025, check out those websites. Check out those colleges, those admission sites, see what is out there, see what they have. A lot of them will have search functions. K-State's website is massive. I don't know how many pages are on that site, so I use the search function in the top right, because I don't know how to find the study abroad office. I don't know how to find the College of Engineering website, so I just search it, and a lot of colleges will have the same sort of thing. Check, when you're on those websites, check for those priority dates, because as I mentioned, K-State's application date to be considered for those admission scholarships, that was December 1st. So that has already passed. So for future students or for other colleges might have different priority dates, so it's why it's important to reference those. Of course, You want to complete any additional scholarship applications at each school you're considering. It is okay to apply to more than one. Absolutely. They're not going to, say like, hey, you're cheating on us with that other school. We don't care. We just want you to come hang out with us. Of course, apply for private scholarships. Those outside of K-State, outside of KU, wherever. Those can typically go to any school, those for sure. And then, finally, follow up. Set up a meeting with the financial aid advisor at whatever school you're going to. It's like, hey, I think I get everything, but let's just cover it. Let's talk about the cost of attendance. Let's talk about billing. Let's talk about how do I make a payment if I'm going to pay out of pocket. We can help you through all those kind of things. Speaking of, there we are. So there's 4 financial aid advisors at K-State. We split the alphabet. I handle last names E through K, but I help anybody who comes in. Dylan helps A through D, Tori with L through R, and they split the R's. I don't know, R is very popular last name. And then Becky does RO through Z. And you can set up appointments with us. We use Calendly. Our page will be on our website. You can go to that URL there and click on whoever needs to meet. We can meet over the phone. You can have a Zoom meeting. You can meet in person if you want to come. Since you're all local, come to Anderson Hall. We'll sit in my office. It's not very big, but it's comfy. And yeah, we'll talk about it. All right. I've talked a lot. I'm out of breath. Do you guys have any questions for me? I'm gonna try to go around. Yes.
When do the students receive the K-State, like a comprehensive financial aid package showing like exactly everything they were awarded?
Excellent question. So, students will receive financial offer notifications at some point next semester. We don't know quite yet. We have started receiving those. We have received 24, 20, 25, 26 FAFSAs. I haven't been given communication as far as when will be packaged. Last year was a hot mess, and it was not until late April, May that those went out. It should be so much faster earlier this year. I'm hoping, around that prairie date time, March 1st, potentially earlier. I don't have a specific answer, but it should be a whole lot earlier than late April. But it is, so unfortunately I don't have a specific answer, but it is a very good question. And I guess it could vary from school to school, depending on how their systems update, because we have to, with a new FAFSA each year, we have to make sure our system can take in those files, interpret them, and make sure we calculate their need correctly. So, yeah. Okay. Other questions? Yes?
Are you going to miss out on anything if you don't fill up FAFSA, knowing that you're not going to be eligible for FAFSA?
So, with the FAFSA, every student is going to be eligible for at least federal direct unsubsidized loans, the very basic. So say you're SAI, say you had an SAI of $500,000, which I have seen. And that's obviously going to be way higher than the cost of attendance, at least I hope. and so that's, you're not going to be receiving any need-based aid, but you will still at the very least be offered, that's $5,500 in unsubsidized loans for that first year. And so in my opinion, of course, I'm paid to say, it's better to have that offer and not need it than to need it and not have it. So if you have some time, one night here in the next couple of months, try to fill out that FAFSA. But it is not required for admissions, not required for admissions, scholarships. A lot of scholarships don't require the FAFSA, but some of those need-based grants from the state and from K-State will use the FAFSA. And there are also some outside scholarships that will, some require Pell eligibility. I think there's some of the bigger ones for specific circumstances. They'll say you have to be eligible for the Pell grant, and we'll work with them and we'll get it figured out. But that's a great question. So not everybody has to go with the FAFSA. Yeah, for sure. Some question. Here, we'll go here and then here.
The Kansas Landing Grant promise.
Yes.
Can you use that also with Royal Purple or Wildcat Traditions? Can you have both?
Yes. So yes, you absolutely can use the land grant promise with your scholarships. In fact, that is what we try to do. Because the cost of tuition, say the cost of tuition is $5,000 for one semester. The I think Royal Purple is $4,000 a year, so that's $2,000. Say you get a Pell Grant as well for however much. We'll make sure that your total gift aid gets up to that $5,000 in addition. So like, if you only get that scholarship and no Pell, you'll get that $3,000 to get you up to that $5,000 from the land grant. And I have seen land grants around that much in one semester, and it is by semester is how it's awarded, at least this year. So, great question. A question back here.
I have twins, so on the FAFSA, filling that out, do they each have to fill out their part, and do I have to fill it out twice for each one?
Yes. Yes. However, you'll only have to complete, you only have one FSA ID, but yes, each student will have their unique identifier, their unique SSN, so they have to create their own FSA IDs and complete it themselves, and then the parent will then complete 2 different FAFSAs, one for each student. Great question. Yes.
As a contributor, I think there was a slide that stated that there would be, a student would be ineligible for student aid if the contributor portion wasn't filled out. Is that a separate website? Is that linked to a FAFSA account? What is that specifically?
A contributor is the parent portion of the FAFSA, the parent is the contributor. It is all going to be housed at studentaid.gov. And essentially, if a student is not considered independent by some metric, whether they're married or have dependents themselves or something, they're going to require parents' information in order to be considered for federal aid. So that's kind of that qualifier. And then so when the student completes their portion, there will be a part in it where they will say, hey, you need to invite a parent. The parent will then get the email, they'll do their portion. There'll be a link, you can also just log into studentaid.gov. It's all on that housed on that same website, but it is going to have to be 2 individual. I mean, the student can log out of their FSA ID on the same computer, hand it over, and then you can log in and complete your portion. It doesn't matter if the IP address is different or it'll all be. It just does require that. If the student's dependent, a parent is required. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Send it to the meeting if you have any more questions. Yes?
You said that the Pell Grant is 70K for is that the whole 70,000?
Sure. Yeah, that's $70,000 for the land grant promise, that total family income. So that would be, the FAFSA will then, it's total family, yeah, it is kind of vague. It considers AGI, so adjusted gross income. So whatever, I think it's like line 11 on the 1040, we take that, or the Department of Education will take that figure, plug it into the FAFSA. We will also take the student's income, because that's part of the family. So say it's student filed taxes in 2023, their income, their AGI will be considered, and then parents filing jointly, whatever that final number was, that will also be considered part of that income. It's with the land grant promise, not necessarily Pell, but with that guarantee of aid up to the cost of tuition, it is limited to students whose total family income is $70,000 or less. Yeah, does that answer? Gotcha. Okay. Yes. If you didn't file taxes in 2023, I think there is a place to say you have not filed or will file. Awesome. And then, they will pull it at that point. I think that there is a place to report your own information there as well. I have seen FAFSAs where it's like, sometimes the data retrieval, or excuse me, the DDX, whatever, I forget the acronym. We have so many acronyms. Sometimes it doesn't work because it's the government. Not everything works. Sometimes that connection fails, and then it's like, okay, actually, we need you to plug in your own information, and it works fine. But I think in most cases, there is like, it'll ask like, hey, did you file in 2023? How did you file? What form did you use? Did you have a Schedule C? What about a this? What about a that? And it will, basically, like I said, if you answer yes to that question, it will then ask you like, oh, okay, well, you need to tell us about this. So, yeah, it's a pretty, millions and millions of people fill it out every year, so it's a pretty unique working form. Feel free to let us know if you have any additional questions about it. Yes?
What is the discount if the parent is a K-State employee?
Awesome question. Yes, I love that question. Because I'm sure, we're local here, a lot of students might come from K-State families. I believe, so if a student is the student's parent works at K-State as a staff member, faculty, staff, there's a lot of different qualifications. If they are full-time, so they have to be enrolled in at least 12 credit hours, I believe it's 7 of those 12 can be covered, or 7 of the 15. It's 7 credit hours each semester, and it's fall and spring, summer not included. But yeah, 7 credit hours will be covered if you are a staff member. So yeah, that's undergrad. If they are a graduate student, it is 3 credit hours, I believe. My wife is a vet med student, and we get 3 credit hours each semester taken care of her like 25. Vet med is absolutely insane, but it's great at K-State if you guys are interested. A little plug for the vet med school. It's pretty awesome.
Did you say 7?
7 credit hours? Yes. Yes, 7 credit hours if you are a staff member at K-State. And so I'm sure no professor, but if I had a dependent and going to K-State, they would also qualify. So if you're working at K-State, check with your employer, check with us to see if your dependent would qualify. That's a great question. All right, any other questions? What time are we at? We're at 7:55, been here almost an hour. Yes?
You said it several times, December 1 was the deadline for K-State for what? I just didn't see what that December 1st.
Sure, so December 1st was the application deadline to be considered for those admissions scholarships. So the ones based on best GPA and ACT. So a student would have had to have applied by that date to be considered for those scholarships. Yes?
If they're still considered, it just depends whether or not there's still money, right? You can still apply past December 1st.
You absolutely can still apply, for sure. Yeah, it's not guaranteed that you would be considered for those scholarships. I know that you can certainly be considered for departmental scholarships, federal aid, absolutely. But some of those, priority date is pretty steadfast in some of those situations. Yep, those based off of GPA and ACT. Okay, let's see, maybe 1 or 2 more questions, then we should probably send it. Yeah, go ahead.
For instance, is FAFSA open to anyone who is spending USA?
That's a good question. FAFSA, to be considered eligible for FAFSA, you have to be, a citizen, permanent resident, and then there are some other circumstances. I think like certain refugee status, certain visa status, you can complete the FAFSA. I know, but just residing in the United States does not guarantee eligibility for federal aid.
How long is a person has to be in the U.S. in order to apply for FAFSA?
There's not a specific number of years a student has to live in the United States. It's just if they have that documentation. Yeah, that's what's required to vote for FAFSA. Not in every circumstance. If a student doesn't have a social, if they have some other sort of identifier, whether it be like a visa or a tax information, tax number, then they can also complete the FAFSA. Yeah, it's always best to just, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. And, yeah.
It says Social Security, will they honor the ITN number?
Yeah, and thank you.
You want to do that?
I think there are some guidelines where a student has used an ITN. I know the parent can. Not parents don't have to have a social to complete their FAFSA. I think if the student has an ITN, I think they can complete it, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it does vary based on their visa status.
If the student has a Social Security number, but the parents do not have, how do they apply? If
Yes.
the student is still applying,
Yes. If the student has a social, the parent does not require a social. Yep, doesn't require it. If there are specific steps parents who don't have socials they can take to then complete the FAFSA. Sometimes it requires like some verification. Sometimes you can use your ITN. Sometimes you put in all zeros and it won't take you that way. Yeah, it kind of varies, but absolutely, parents do not have to have a social to complete the FAFSA.
and FAFSA will provide which one to remember, what are the English?
Ooh, great question. I believe that at the very least, there's a Spanish version. I don't know if there is. I'm sure that there are other translations of the FAFSA. I know I'm like 99% sure there's a Spanish version. But yeah, that's something that I need to look into. Great question.
And then the last question, if not now the family of the preferred language for the English, how will we be able to obtain assistance?
That's a great question. I don't. K-State doesn't necessarily provide translation for like the FAFSA, but I'm assuming that there's probably resources out there. I'm not aware of any offered like through K-State, unfortunately.
And I think the last question on the team was, if the students are eligible with Social Security number, but they don't have the income, then what next?
I think you can say either I did not file, and like if they didn't file taxes, there's a place to answer. I did not file, and it will just be like, great, move on. If they did file, they don't necessarily have to have access to the tax return. It's often a good idea to have it. It will just pull that information directly from the IRS, and we'll pull that.
Excellent answer. No further questions.
Well, thank you for asking questions and for helping those folks. I really appreciate that. It's incredible. I'm very glad that you're here. All right. Anybody else? If you have further questions, I mean, I'll be around for a little bit, but you can come up and ask if you have meetings, but I'll say, we're here past 8 o'clock. Let's close things. Yeah, feel free, if you guys have additional questions, come on down, we'll talk. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming.